This is the moment we've been waiting for. On November 2nd, the most important decision maker, potentially, on all of the issues we've been talking about regarding local renewable energy is speaking in town. His name is Pedro Pizarro, and he is the CEO of Southern California Edison. And this is our opportunity to welcome him to becoming a partner with us as a community to transforming the energy picture in Santa Barbara and creating a 100% renewable local energy system. This is the flyer. Everyone has one. Take a couple extras if you want. We brought extras for everyone to bring with them. We need to pack the house because we've been telling him that this community is fired up and ready to go on renewable energy. And November 2nd is the day we have to prove it. I did that thing where I forget to introduce myself, so I'm going to start real quick with a little bit of a story. My name is Matt Renner. I'm the Executive Director of the World Business Academy. I've been working with this organization for 3 years, and our effort and our goal is to transform the energy system in Santa Barbara, in South Santa Barbara County, to create a 100% renewable energy system and to prevent a blackout and catastrophic meltdown of our energy system at the same time. This really fascinates and excites me and makes me jump out of bed every day because this is the community that can lead the way on this effort at scale and prove what we've been talking about for a long time here, that this is the solution to climate change, and it starts with communities and it starts with every single person in this room. One of my most important experiences before this was working with Occupy Wall Street. And in that effort in New York, I got to see something come alive in a different way than anything, in my understanding, in an unprecedented way. If we had known that one of the most important people who could make decisions about the issue that we were fired up about was going to be in town almost a month from the day that we started talking about it, we could have turned out 10,000 people to that event, right? This is the kind of passion we need to pursue this meeting with. And we've said this before, this is game time. This is the game. I'll let Ronaldo touch on it some more when he comes up here in a minute. So take this flyer. We're going to promote the heck out of it. I want you to tell all your neighbors, this is the one. If you can participate in any event, this is the one to come to. The address is on here, and what Bob said is that everyone should reserve seats because they reserve 100 for students, and then we need to fill the other 200. I'm going to try to coordinate doing some signs or something like that ahead of time too, and we can get creative. But we really want to be welcoming and firm. Get your smartphones out. Let's type in the address and reserve some seats as soon as you have a moment. Next up is Ronaldo Brudico, the president of the World Business Academy, to do exactly what Mike just said, which is to educate you about why it's so important that we turn out to talk to Pedro. Ronaldo, please come up here and join me.
So what's been happening in the last few months now, last couple of months? We have been, as you know, filing constantly at the Public Utilities Commission. And we've had any number of different things. So we've objected in blanket to all forms of fossil fuel generating equipment, and we say it should never be purchased again in California. And so we fought that, and we made this very long pleading on that in the Carlsbad case. And then we got to the Moore Park case, and thank you to all of you who came with us to Moore Park. And we said, in addition to what we said about how bad it is to be putting fossil fuel generating equipment into service, brand new equipment, because A, it's going to add to climate change, and B, you're going to tell us to take it out of service in 10 years, and you're going to make us pay for it for 30. So we're going to get hurt really bad financially paying for equipment that we know is not going to be operational for more than 10 years. And by the way, no one I've ever said that to privately at either Edison or the Public Utilities Commission has ever disagreed with that statement. They know it's coming out in 10 years if they ever turn it on. But there's a game that gets played in these large organizations where everybody's working towards yesterday's expectations. They're not working towards tomorrow's solutions, even though they give lip service to them. So the position we took, which by the way came out of a private conversation I had with Commissioner Florio 2 years ago, when I said to him, please don't ever, ever, ever consider more fossil fuel plants because we'd have to oppose them on principle. And he said, oh, you don't understand, it's very big, it's complex. Well, the whole thing in Carlsbad was to take that position and put a stake in the ground. And we lost in Carlsbad. There's a tentative order outstanding. They're going to buy all this garbage. So when we got to Moore Park, we said, you know, we told you all that stuff about fossil fuel, and we'd have to pay for it, and it's going to become a stranded asset. And now we're going to add to that, why would you put new fossil fuel generating equipment on a beach in Oxnard? And is the only reason what the Oxnard people tell us is because that's a community of color, where 74% of the people are non-white. And what the people in Oxnard say is, why would you even consider putting it here when you would never consider putting this equipment in Santa Barbara on the beach? You would never put it on the beach in Ventura. Why do you pick on a community that's 74% people of color? That's a social justice issue, so we argued that. And again, thanks for all of you who came with us on that trip where we verbally took that on. The other thing we said in Moore Park was, why would you put 150 megawatts south of Oxnard, in effect, when it's got to come up the same 220 kilovolt line that looks like this, that's going to collapse? And you know it's going to collapse because in 2012 you said so officially, and in 2014 in your internal documents you repeated it. And you've even told us what's going to bring it down. You said a significant El Nino event will bring it down. This year or next, okay? So how can you take that and seriously put the power there when it belongs up here, which is SBR3, the microgrid here? Then we had what was called the distributed resources filing, where we said, now that we're talking about distributed resources, which is the beginning of the end of the grid, let's go back to Santa Barbara and talk about SBR3. We're the people who told you don't buy any more fossil fuels. We're told you the people who told you don't put it on beaches. We're the people who told you don't, whatever you do, don't rely on this 220 kilovolt line. Because this is really not a minor problem. This is huge. And as a result of all that, they started having private conversations with us. I was invited to go to the headquarters of Edison in Monrovia. And we had some very frank private conversations. And they brought a lot of people into the room. Actually, that was followed by a private meeting up in San Francisco with one of their top officials. And then we had another meeting. And then we had some exchanges. And then on Monday of this week, we had another meeting. And what these meetings have been producing, and I agreed to enter into a confidentiality with them. So I won't tell you what's getting done at these meetings and what's getting said. But the bottom line is, Edison was under the misimpression that because they warned us in 2012 and we didn't say anything, there's no problem. And in a way, they're right. Now, the people I've been talking to get it. In fact, they've been very complimentary of the fact that the Academy has been so aggressively trying to put a spotlight on this. So what I've tried to do with them is to up-level the degree of visibility that this problem has. Because I said to their faces, which I can tell you what I said, is, look, I know why you filed that in 2012. You did that to try and restrict your liability. So, well, we told the people in 2012 they didn't do anything. What are we supposed to do? We're just a utility. We're not the political leadership. We're not the city council. We're not the county board of supervisors. So, you know, ball's in your court. And nothing happened. Not one elected official contacted them. Not one public works department in the county contacted them. Not one group of citizens contacted them, and it's been laying there like a lox for 3 years. So these conversations we've been having have finally produced a result. And the result is, are you really accurate, World Business Academy, when you tell us that people are paying attention now? Are you really being accurate that the people of this community really care? Are you really willing to give us some, what's the word I'm looking for, ammunition to deal with this problem? And I said, you bet. This whole town's getting up in arms. So you got to know that the city council of Santa Barbara, just a little over a week ago, had a hearing. They brought in, they send two of the people, they call them what, local something relations, what is it called? Local Public Affairs, LPA, that's their internal nomenclature. They send a couple of LPA people to the city council meeting to do their normal little dance. The question on the agenda was, why is it that power keeps going on, goes off on State Street? We've had like our 5th or 6th blackout this year. And so they were asked for an answer. And they started to do their normal thing. And the answer basically was, we're working on it. So as I pointed out to Edison, when you say you're working on something once, okay, maybe I'll give you a pass. Twice, I don't know. 3 times, at some point we're working on it, just doesn't wash. And so that happened at this meeting. And fortunately, because Jerry testified at that meeting, they actually asked, what is this story about this tower going to come down? Is that true? What's going on with that? And these 2 representatives of Edison said, well, we don't know. We don't know anything about it. The local public affairs officials sent to make us feel good didn't even know that their own company had said their power was coming down. That, to me, is the quintessential essence of the problem. It lacks visibility even in their own organization. So I said I would undertake to get them some additional validation that the community, it's not just Rinaldo Brutoco, it's not just the World Business Academy, this community wants a solution, and we want it now. And we want it to be treated with the urgency that a calamity of this type deserves. You know, if you were FEMA and you knew a storm was coming against the Gulf Coast, wouldn't you have some trailers somewhere just in case? Wouldn't you be preparing for something as catastrophic as a hurricane that could wipe out a city? What about losing 2/3 of your power? And there's a plan, by the way. There is a plan in place that when this happens, they already figured out how they're going to route power to first responders. So the police are going to keep their power. The fire people are going to keep their power. Paramedics if they're at the fire station. We're told some hospitals, emergency rooms, and they're looking at the possibility of senior or elder care facilities, but there's too many of them. And that's going to leave about 2 to 4 hours maximum per day of power for all the rest of us. 2 to 4 hours a day. Rolling blackouts. We'll have 1/3 left. And that 1/3 is in jeopardy in my sense because the calculation was done in 2013 before Goleta started building all that stuff. Goleta's really been booming. So we probably need more power than we needed in 2013. Okay, so what this is a letter I'm holding. So, okay, good news, Edison's listening. The good news is Edison is listening, and they're listening at the highest level. Our attorney bumped into Pedro at an event a week ago, Saturday. And he introduced himself. He said, I'm Larry Chassett. I work with the World Business Academy. And Pedro said, yeah, I know you guys. You're working on the Santa Barbara thing. And Larry goes, yeah. Well, when Larry told me this story, I was very flattered. He would know who we are at the head of Edison. So that's good. We're starting to make some headway. And we then, he exchanged some thoughts, and he told Larry, our attorney, who's really great, Yale-trained attorney, one of the people with a great deal of respect here in the state. He said to Larry, you know, we really have to, this is a quote, we have to think outside the box, close quote. We understand that. And I thought to myself, that is really refreshing for a whole bunch of reasons, including that's what Edison told me when I walked in the other day. We know we have to think outside the box. So I know he's not just telling me, he's telling his people that. So let me tell you about this letter. This is part of Outside the Box. And what this is a letter to Michael Hoover. Now, Michael Hoover is the senior VP of Edison for regulatory affairs. Now, let me translate that. That means his office sits right next to the Public Utilities Commission. He's in charge of extracting money from us. Okay? That's Michael Hoover. And he's actually a very thoughtful guy. And I think we've convinced him. And what he needs is he needs to hear from us now. And he needs to hear from us in a public way, not in a private meeting. He needs to hear, we are concerned. So this letter, should I read it or not? Huh? Okay. Dear Mr. Hoover, as a resident and ratepayer in Southern California, Edison Santa Barbara service territory, I am concerned about the increasing threat of a massive and sustained power outage resulting from a failure of 2 high-voltage transmission lines mounted on a single series of towers currently providing our region with electrical power. Now, anybody who lives here that isn't seriously concerned is not paying attention at what's happening here. So I think that paragraph's true. The second paragraph recites a June 2014 presentation at which Southern California Edison, entitled, quote, South Santa Barbara County Reliability Issues. That's public utilities speak for the power could go off. Lists, this Santa Barbara County Reliability Issue, lists 4 factors contributing to the reliability concerns of our region. Here is what they listed. The fact that a single set of towers carry both transmission lines. 2, the prevalence of fires and landslides, that's an El Nino event, in the terrain where the towers currently stand. 3, geographic isolation of our service area that constrains Edison from developing alternative transmission routes. And 4, inadequate backup power from existing energy sources, i.e., when it goes down, it stays down. Now, I won't read the rest of this. It goes on for a page and a half. What I'd like to do is, nothing would make me happier than to get every single citizen of Santa Barbara to sign one of these. But what we have to do is we got to get a bunch of them. And we're not going to wait till we have 10,000 to send them to Mike. We're going to start sending them out tomorrow, and we're going to send them out the day after and the day after. Every organization that you belong to, bring one of these. We'll make as many copies as people want. Sign them. All it's asking for is, and I'll read the final conclusion. In summary, Santa Barbara residents have serious concerns about the reliability and resiliency of the current transmission system connecting our South Coast communities to the statewide grid. Our primary request is that SCE work closely with the World Business Academy, and this is italicized, on an urgent basis to protect our communities by developing a local microgrid system using distributed renewable energy here in the Santa Barbara South Coast region that will provide complete energy reliability and resilience for ratepayers. Now, what I've told Mike Hoover, and I've told other senior executives at the firm, we don't think they have to spend anything they're not already intending to spend. So this isn't about Santa Barbara rating somebody. This is about take the money and use it prudently and start the solution to this problem immediately. In the meantime, I can tell you what I did today. I signed up for a generator. I signed up for solar cells on my house. And I signed up for a battery backup. And I'm going to get them installed as fast as I can. Just as fast as I can. Because I have no confidence in those lines. So I'm saying to each of you tonight, because I care about everybody in this room, I care about everybody in this South Coast area. Take care of yourself so your refrigerator keeps the meat frozen. Take care of yourself so you've got power in your house, because that's what you really want to do to make sure that your lights don't go out. And know that every kilowatt of solar you install on your roof is 1 kilowatt less that we have to pull from that little bit of 1/3 of power that's going to be around. So you're actually helping your neighbors by getting power for your house. Oh, and by the way, it'll probably save you money, because I think if you do it right, you could probably save your electrical bill in the process. So I've gotten this done before in other houses, and I'm doing it here. No, that's incorrect. Everything that you generate goes first to power your home. If you have excess generation, which is a good thing, then it goes into the grid. And when you turn your lights on, let's say you don't have any batteries, so you're only making electricity during the day. So when you're sending extra electricity out, your meter's going backwards. And when you pull it in at night, now your meter's going forward. So everything you give to the grid, you get back for free. However, if you get too much energy into the grid, where you can't use all the energy you've created, what they pay you for, it's very little. You get a little bit, but not a lot. So what we recommend is that you power your home, and I will just mention 4 things very quickly. Number 1, everybody here needs to have a dedicated circuit. Okay, it's an electrical circuit in your home. That's what you will switch on if the power goes out. You should have this for earthquakes too, by the way. So you have a dedicated circuit. So make sure everything that's really critical to you is on that circuit. So you want to have your refrigerator, freezer on that circuit. If you're on oxygen, you want your oxygen machine to be plugged into that circuit. I recommend you have a printer or your computer, that you have a router, a light bulb, and probably at least a microwave if you have one in your home, all on that. Now, in my house, I've also got an electric ignition old-fashioned furnace, so that's going to be on it, and I'm going to put my water heater on it. When you put all those things on, even in a large house like mine, it's still less than 50 amps. So that's all I got to take care of is those 50 amps because of this problem with the transmission lines. So dedicated circuit, number one. Isolate how much power you need in a crisis. Number two, solar on your roof means you'll be producing energy cheaper than you can buy it today from Edison. If I just bought solar cells on my roof today, it would pay for itself in 6.5 years and I'd have free energy after that. If I put in batteries, which I'm going to, so that at night I've got extra power, so I don't want to give all my power away in the daytime. I want to have extra power for at night. Together with batteries, I'm going to have a payback in 12.5 to 14 years, meaning it'll be fully paid for, and all my energy after that's free on a 20-year system. And third thing you want to consider is a generator. I know some of us in this room are considering generators, and what generators do is they give you an insurance policy. A generator gives you a policy that tells you if you can't generate enough because of the grid being down for so long, the generator can kick in. Now, I think what you want to do is you want to use solar and batteries. That's your system with a dedicated circuit. For those who have needs which they want to have an insurance policy, the way I look at it is like, I didn't die today, but I have a lot of life insurance. So I lost in a way, right? I paid for an insurance policy I didn't really need today. One day my wife will collect, hopefully, right? So an insurance policy, a small generator is an insurance policy for prolonged outages. It's just insurance. Ties into your natural gas line, okay? So, yeah, it ties into the existing natural gas line in your house. It doesn't tie, so like if you got a gas barbecue in your house, if you got like a gas water heater, if you've got anything gas stove, you have a line already. Just tap that line, and you only turn that on in an emergency where the basic solar and batteries isn't enough. And they're not that expensive, so for me, I'm getting one because it's a great insurance policy. Can I cover it? Okay, I want to thank you all for one thing. Can they send them themselves? Okay, they're going to sign them themselves, or we can collect them. Okay, if you want to give them to us at the door, we'll mail them for you. If you want to mail them yourself, you got the address right there. Yeah, you're talking, Stan is bringing up the fact there's been a bill proposed in California, which we will obviously fight at the PUC and elsewhere, where they would tax people on solar. And the theory is, if you're using solar and you're not using the grid, then you should pay your share of the fact the grid exists. It's very circuitous logic at best. I think it did go through in Arizona. I personally don't believe, from my conversations with the PUC, and we had a private meeting. Matt was in a private meeting with 3 commissioners just 2 weeks ago, right, Matt? Staff of 3 commissioners. I don't think that's going to be something that's going to happen in California, but I'm certainly not going to go to sleep on it. We are watching it. I think we got the right legislature. I think we have the right PUC actually to stop that. But I just want to share with you, I'm now pleased that Edison is starting to take this seriously. And I think they're starting to look at this more clearly than the PUC even. And one of the reasons is, when you file something in 2012 to absolve you of liability by saying, well, we warned you, there's nothing we can do, and then there's a whole paper trail about the things you could have done, it tends to undercut your liability protection. And I think that message is getting through. I always tell them, by the way, I'm a nice person, but I am a lawyer. And I want you to know I believe in class actions. So I think that Edison's listening now because they're prudent business people, even faster than the political establishment. But I believe the political establishment will stand with us to stop that tax. Yeah, so the question is, how does getting the reliability issue solved, the power over those 220 kilovolt lines, how does that affect the microgrid? Great question. The answer is, if you make the assumption that they're never going to replace these 220 kilovolt lines, because they're not. They've already telegraphed that. They don't ever want to put these back. It's just too hard. Actually, they could have done that since they had 3 years. They didn't do it. maybe. But to answer your question, what we're saying to them is, since you can't bring power here over those lines, they're compromised, then why don't you let us build a microgrid in Santa Barbara which doesn't use those lines? Which is part of what we said in the Moore Park proceeding. Don't put 150 megawatts in Oxnard, put them up here. Now, they are clearly aware that it's going to have to be renewable or we're not going to let it in. So they know that. There's also a docket you should know about. They are permitted to pick one community. Actually, they're allowed to pick 5. They've already picked 4. One community in which to do a demonstration microgrid project. We have formally asked them to make us that 5th community. So we'll see. These letters will help them choose to make us that. They're all in Southern California. No, Lancaster's separate. It's Orange County. Irvine is one of them, down there. A dedicated circuit is when you call an electrician, an electrical contractor to be exact, and they come out and you say, these are the things I want to run if there's an emergency. They then go to your main panel and they make sure that the wires connected to those outlets are in one circuit. And that circuit is never going to be larger for anybody in this room than 50 amps. Yeah, it's the way that your master panel is configured so that when you hit it, it goes only to those places and not only the places in your house. The power. So a contractor will come out. Oh, no, because if you have a dedicated circuit, so we're saying to you, we have this program called Powering Paradise. So what we want you to do is let us know you're interested. We will talk to you over the phone. Cynthia over there. Cynthia, raise your hand. Cynthia's going to talk to you over the phone. She'll walk you through this, and then we're going to send you to our joint partner on this, okay? And Allen Construction, which is I think the largest contractor locally, a $40 million a year business, is our partner. If you want a dedicated circuit, they'll install it, and then they'll tell you, now that you've got that, see, you don't need to power your whole house in an emergency, so maybe you don't need 10 kilowatts on your roof, maybe you can do it with 5. So you'll be able to get a smaller solar array. You'll be able to buy less batteries in order to keep all your emergency stuff running. Well, no, but I'll tell you what, you talk to Cynthia, doesn't have, but we're recommending solar because if the grid goes down, you want some electricity from somewhere, and it could come from your own roof through a battery pack. Okay? So what I ordered today, I'm the first one in the program, I've officially ordered. I've ordered solar cells for my roof, a battery pack, and a dedicated circuit, and a generator as a backup. That's what I ordered today. Now, some people will order one, some people will order all, but go to Cynthia, talk to her, she'll send you, and Allen will send a person to your house. Now, I want to warn everybody, they've already told us all of their work orders between now and December 31 are full. So the earliest they can install is January, the beginning of the El Nino season. Get in the front of the line. I would like to say I got in the front of the line because I'm a nice guy. Truth is, I wanted to set an example, but I'm also glad I'm going to be in the front of the line. Okay. Okay. So one last one. Okay. Great question. What are the renewable energy sources that Edison could consider for the microgrid here? We have done a detailed proposal for Edison, our team here, and I want to thank Bob Perry particularly. We've analyzed Santa Barbara for maximum solar development. It turns out very easily we could create over 250 megawatts of power just with the solar available in this community. And that's comprised of rooftops of commercial buildings, private land, which is available to put large solar arrays on, and a number of other structures which we believe are available or could be made available. It turns out that Santa Barbara has a phenomenal wealth of solar energy because everything in town points south. We also have some western exposure, which is good because west is second best after south. So when you have south and west, you got maximum solar. Now let me give you an example. We don't have good wind here. So you can't use wind commercially, but solar is very commercially viable. That's an example. Eventually, I would also like to see them add geothermal and a few other things. But look, this is the town that has seen crazy stuff happen, including the leak at Refugio Beach and a lot of other crazy stuff before that. We don't want the next crazy thing to be this, and nobody said boo and didn't take care of themselves. So I know they're going to get me off the stage. I went too long. Thank you very much. Great to see you again. I missed you all.
Thanks, Ronaldo. And yeah, so I know we jumped in and we do that, and I apologize. The issue that we wanted to deal with, and that I can talk about a little bit quickly, is this transmission failure issue that we've been talking about now for a few weeks, or months at this point. This is lagging a little bit. Anyway, just a quick overview. So this is our energy area right here, and that map's not great. You can see it here, which is essentially that we're out at that Goleta substation at the very end. That's what brings in most of our energy. Our concern is that the line in between Goleta and the next node on the grid is compromised. And this is from an Edison report in their own words talking about that issue. You can read it, and I'm happy to send this presentation to anyone who wants to take a look at it. The next point is the Santa Clara substation, which is down by, where is that, Ventura County? No, it's called the Santa Clara substation. I know it's confusing. But it is, where is that? What's that near, Bob? North of Oxnard. So there's a big file here that shows you a quick overview of the line that we're talking about. Here it is. So this is a quick flyover of the line starting down at the substation, and we're over on the left side of the screen. That's Santa Barbara. The city of Santa Barbara we're just passing it now on the left. I'm sorry, that was Carpinteria. This is a zoom in to show you how drastic the mountains are where this line passes through. This line is made up of about 70 transmission towers, 50 to 70, and they go through this incredibly rugged backside of the mountains. So you can't see them, but they're right on the other side of the Santa Ynez Mountains. Now we're passing Santa Barbara, and we're going over towards Goleta on the coast. And as you can tell, that this is rugged terrain. There's only one little tiny road right at the ridge of the mountains that gives you access to these towers. So the concern is that in a El Nino event or another series of storms, you would get a washout of one of these towers. And likely if you got that, you'd get a washout of the road that accesses them. We'd have to wait weeks just to start fixing it, potentially, according to Edison's own report. And it's a little out of focus there, but again, I'm happy to share this. It says it would take potentially several weeks even to begin repairing one of these towers. So that's why we're very concerned about an extended blackout. I went up and took these pictures at one of the towers I was actually able to access without trespassing to illegally. And this is just one of the footings I found in a 15-minute search looking at two different towers. As you can see, this is about this much concrete, and it's all that's holding up this massive, I'd say 50-foot tower. And there's nothing underneath that one on the left. That's as deep as it is. And so, and as you can tell, it's fully exposed, and there's a little dirt behind it, but there's very little holding it up. And with a few big rainstorms, that could be gone, and that tower could collapse. That's our big concern. We wouldn't even know about it, but Edison is the one that published it in their report, like I said, which is in these slides. So I'm not going to go through these whole slides because we got a lot to cover tonight, but this is why we are advocating for a local renewable energy system that will keep us safe in a blackout and will transition us to 100% renewable energy here locally as quickly as possible. And when you start building your own power, producing your own power, building your own power systems, you actually become energy independent. And the wonderful thing about it is we can actually end up saving money and not adding more carbon dioxide into the air and methane. One thing to add to what Ronaldo said, so we want everyone to sign these letters and send them in or hand them back to us and we'll send them in. We want you to get one of your neighbors or one friend to sign one and send it in, or give it to us and we'll send it in. And then we have a petition that we've collected. What is our number? 1,500? 1,500 signatures from community members in town just since Earth Day talking about the need for local renewable energy. We're going to take that petition, and if you haven't signed it yet, please sign it on your way out the door. Kristen can help you. Kristen, raise your hand. There are clipboards with the petition on it right at the door. sign that. We're going to deliver those signatures to Edison and say, look, here's the ammunition you need. This community is behind this effort. Let's do it. Our amazing Becca Clausen, who's standing in the back, is also working on our efforts to get the local electeds involved. So this is happening, and we need your help. That's my bottom line. Now, speaking of community organizing, I want to introduce somebody here, and this is kind of the dessert of the evening, to talk about his experience making an international effort from something that seemed like a community organizing effort. The original resistance movement here right in our backyards. One of my friends and one of my favorite people, Dr. Jerry Brown.
Thank you. So I just returned from Delano, California. I just returned from Delano, California from the 50th anniversary of Cesar Chavez and the farm workers' grape strike and boycott. And it was just amazing to me to live this long, and number two, to see that the ripple of energy that the farm workers' movement sent out, starting from Delano, continues to reverberate, not only in the state of California, in Florida, in Mexico, and around the world. Cesar Chavez is known. And when I came here tonight, would you stand up, Victor? Victor Fuentes, who taught Spanish at the university, he handed me a book on Cesar Chavez y la Unión. So I'll just pass this around, maybe some of you who speak Spanish. So one of the things I remembered and I learned in my visit to Delano is that white people can't clap, all right? We applaud, all right? So first of all, I want to share with you the farm workers clap. And this happens at all of the meetings. And there is also a little mantra that goes along with it. It's called Si se puede. This means, yes, we can. I heard that some politician liked this so much that he used it in one of his campaigns. I don't remember who, all right? And the reason for Si se puede was that when Cesar started going house to house and talking to farm workers about building a union, he said, no se puede. You know, how could that be possible? There's the growers, there's the banks, there's the agricultural. We can't possibly. So Cesar reprogrammed them with Si se puede. So we're going to start out. So it goes like this. There you go. Si se puede. There you go. Si se puede. All right, so now we're going to test you on that at the end of this little presentation. The other thing I remembered, climate change and global warming was in the Central Valley when I was there. I mean, it was 96, it was 98, back then in the 1960s. And it was really hot. And as we drove into the valley, I turned to my beloved wife, Julie, and I said, imagine, Julie, we've left our little village in Mexico. We drove up here. We have 3 kids in the back seat. And the only way that we know how to make a living is to pick these crops. This is our destiny. And she looked at me. And that's kind of how I became involved with the farm workers movement, because I went to a college that had a work-study program, and for my last year, my 5th year in the college, I went out to the Coachella Valley, and I worked on a farm. I thought this would be an interesting lark, to see California, work on a farm, and it was horrible. It was horrible. That's me, with hair. Okay, and I got fired. I won't go into the details. I protested, and I mean, there were roaches all over the beds. There were springs sticking out. The showers were all rusty. The foremans were nasty. I got fired. And I made one phone call, and I had a job in Washington, D.C. And as I was sitting on the bus, Greyhound or whatever those buses were then, and driving past the farm worker houses and homes through the valley, I had this epiphany. These farm workers can't make a phone call and get out of here. This is their lives. This is their lives. So I went to graduate school. I'm trained in anthropology at Cornell. My love was really Aztecs and Maya. But when it came time to do my dissertation, I saw that Cesar pictures in the newspapers was leading a march, a peregrinación, a pilgrimage, from Delano to Sacramento. And they had the American flag, the Mexican flag, and the flag of the Virgin of Guadalupe. And I knew that from the Wobblies in the 1890s, through the Communist Party, through the AFL-CIO, to the Catholic Church, no one had ever been able to organize farm workers. But Cesar looks like he was being successful. And I was curious. I said, why is Cesar Chavez being successful? So I decided this is what I want to study. And I'm going to go out and study the whole community of Delano. We drove up Route 99, my ex and I, who was with me. This was our baby, the farm workers. And we turned left instead of right when we got to Delano. I walked into a bar. I said, "Where's the Farm Workers Union Hall?" And it was like one of those black and white cowboy movies where everything went silent, and if looks could kill, I would have been dead. I was on the wrong side of town. I was on the white side of town. The banks, the agricultural equipment, the labor contractors, the stores. And I realized in my first 5 minutes there, this town is so polarized that I'm never going to be able to do a community study. So we got back in the car. We drove back across Route 99, not far, across the highway, back to the farm worker side of town where the Filipinos and the farm workers, Mexican Americans. And I found the picket lines that roved around with the picket captains through the grape fields, shouting, "Huelga," come out on strike. In the next week, we were chased by dogs, we were sprayed with pesticides, and the agricultural rigs would come by and throw up dirt and stones at us. They were not discriminating against me. This was happening to all the farm workers. After 2 weeks, I finally got to meet Mr. Chavez. And I was so sophomoric, so full of myself. "Hello, Mr. Chavez. My name is Jerry Brown. I'm an anthropologist from Cornell University. I'm here to study your farm workers movement." And he looks at me, and Cesar had those eyes that just seemed they could pierce right through you. And he doesn't say anything for a long time, a long, long time. Then he says, "You know who we hate around here more than social workers?" "No, Mr. Chavez. Social scientists. Are you here to do another study to tell us that we're poor when any idiot can see that we're poor by driving around town for 15 minutes? Why do you think we're on strike?" Now I'm drowning. I can't go to the other side of town. Cesar Chavez is going to throw me out. I hear my father's mocking voice. "I told you you should have gone into business." And he, at the end of it, he says, "Why don't you go back on the picket lines, come back in a couple of weeks, and we'll talk about your research," with this little smile. And that was I'm the drowning man. His little smile was my straw. So we come back in 2 weeks. He brings me and Juanita, my ex-wife, into the boycott house. He says, "Look, I know you want to do your research. We're fighting for our lives. We've got boycotters in all these cities, and there's dots in the maps. They need support. I want you guys to backstop the boycott. You take one side of the country, you take the east, you take the west, and set up boycotts where we don't have any. If you do that, you'll live with my compadre. I'll introduce you to our weekly meeting. You can go and do your interviews at night. You go on the picket lines with us in the morning. You do the boycott in the day. You'll become the boycott coordinators." "Yes, we'll do it." And he gets to the door, and he turns back, and he says, "Jerry, you're a social scientist, aren't you?" And now I'm gun shy. And he says, I said, yes, Cesar. He says, "Find out if this boycott is working." Long story short, it wasn't. We only had good boycotts in 4 out of the 10 cities, which got over half the grapes. And I think my major contribution to the farm workers movement was showing that research and demonstrating to Cesar and the board that we needed to get great boycotts in at least 8 and 10 of those cities. And when they finally accepted that, they held a huge boycott meeting, called all the boycotters back, got the strikers, and it wasn't a place that was the Santa Barbara mission. And I hadn't seen that mission since like 1968, and when I first came here to Santa Barbara, I lived just a few blocks away from that, so that was a thrill. Now, I knew Cesar very well. Every week I'd sit with him, I'd give him the boycott report, And I had a 1968 VW van that converted to a bed in the back. Caesar had serious chronic back pains. So, and he also, there's this threat out on his life. So whenever we had to drive around or he had to go to meetings, he would lie down in the back of my van. There'd be a security guard in the front, 2 guard cars, 1 in the back, because there was a contract out on his life. And so I spent a lot of time with Caesar. He was, no doubt, the most remarkable individual that I've ever met in my life. And as Gandhi said, strength doesn't come from physical prowess, it comes from an indomitable will. And that's what Caesar had. He could not be moved. And when he planted himself and he said, we're going to build a union, everything followed from that, all the people that came, and the hundreds and thousands of farm workers and the hundreds and thousands of other supporters. If someone asked me, tell me something about Cesar Chavez that I probably don't know, it's the following. Yes, he was a sainted leader. There were 35,000 people at his funeral in 1993. Jesse Jackson gave the eulogy. But Caesar was also a brilliant political strategist. With virtually no money, he kept the farm workers' movement and the grape strike alive and in front of the public for 5 years with no internet. We organized a boycott without an internet. I just want you to think about that. With no media budget. And how did he do it? Using Gandhi's moral jiu-jitsu, turning the strength of the enemy against them. When they said, you can't picket because you're agitating, he sent 44 strikers. They were arrested. The Delano strike, a union movement, is now a civil rights movement. When Martin Luther King was killed in 1968, when Bobby Kennedy was killed in 1968, 68 was a really bad year for those of you who remember, Chavez undertook a fast for nonviolence. And now he said, we still believe in nonviolence, and now he built alliances with the peace movement and the anti-war movement. When farm workers got ill because they sprayed pesticides on the fields, he said, if you give us when we win a contract, we're going to ban the worst pesticides. We're going to get toilets in the field. And now, if you're a consumer, if you're an environmentalist, support our movement. And so Caesar progressively broadened the impact and the coalition that supported the farm workers, from unions to civil rights to anti-war to consumers. And this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing with SBR 3. We are building a broad coalition. Some people care about climate change. Most of you do. Some people care about your electrical bills. Most of you do. Some people care about renewable energy. And we are bringing together around the issue of reliability, the broadest possible issue. One, it's true. It has Gandhian truth force in it, the kind of things Ronaldo and Matt have been talking to you about. And it builds a broad coalition, and everybody's concerned about keeping the lights on. One of the most, and I'm going to wrap up and take some questions, but everything about that 50th anniversary was amazing. Seeing people I haven't seen in so long, seeing the Farm Workers Union alive and well. And when you're in it, you don't realize you're working on something that's going to last that long. And so I asked myself, what would this be like, what we're doing now, 50 years from now? What would if I'm around, what I'd like to get that life extension stuff, what I'd like to see? I think we are laying the groundwork for the first major 100% renewable microgrid in the country that will become a model for California, the United States, and the world. And it's something that 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, we're going to look back at and be really proud of. So now we're going to end with the farm worker clap, but we're going to do SBR 3 instead. Here we go. SBR 3, SBR 3. Viva la huelga. Do you want to take some questions? Any questions? Caesar, the movement, relationships? Yes, sir. No, it's a very good question. And one of the first things I learned from Caesar, and this was kind of a shock to me being an educator, was education is not enough. You have to have power. There are so many issues in the world that anybody who has any concern would like to see fixed. And just to know about them is not enough. Unless you have some way to influence that, you're not going to make a change. So for the farm workers, because they can break strikes all the time, they've done it for half a century, using the poor against the poor. It was the grape boycott that was the power. When enough Americans stopped eating grapes, enough chains stopped carrying them, the prices dropped. The growers called the Bishop of Fresno and said, let's get together with Cesar Chavez. For us, it is pressure before the Public Utilities Commission, pressure on Edison to get a solution. And it's coming up. The farm workers, their solution, their positive solution was the union. Ours is SBR 3. We have designed a better, viable plan than building new greenhouse gas power plants. That's been outlined this evening. So our vehicle right now are the kinds of things we're talking about. These letters will help move the needle towards creating a solution. The problem is there. We need to build the public pressure to implement the solution that the World Business Academy has designed. We just need education on that because it's absolutely not true. Solar is being delivered, wind is so cheap, it's being delivered at 2-3 cents per kilowatt hour. We don't have wind. Solar is being delivered at 5 cents a kilowatt hour. It's cheaper than natural gas. It's way cheaper than nuclear power at 14 and 18 cents. So because, like computers, storage space, memory, all of these things have come down with volume. Over the last 20, 30 years and decades, the cost of solar panels and the whole system has dropped tremendously till it's about $2.50 per watt installed. It is completely competitive now. Germany is a solar powerhouse, and their climate is more like Alaska, and we're here in Southern California. So it's something not true and something we need to educate people about. It's economically competitive. And that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, putting in solar on rooftops, residential, commercial, and solar fields, solar farms. When you drive on a train in Germany, you pass solar farms. And there are some times of day when the sun's really shining when energy is free in Germany. That's how much they've created. And by the way, the jobs in Germany, for those people who say, oh, well, it's going to take away jobs, the amount of people working in advanced energy in Germany is second only to the auto industry. It's created vast new amounts of jobs, and it is doing the same here in the United States. Any other questions before we wrap up? Yes.
Thank you, Jerry. This guy. Hard to follow that, but I'll answer the question. I think that, first of all, we're working on that in some degree. We think that there's a lot of journalists paying attention here locally to this issue that we've been raising about the energy transmission system. We've had a number of interviews, but this coming year is going to be our big campaign year to really to make sure that every single resident of this community understands this issue. So one thing we're raising money for at the end of this year is to spread the word through what we hope will be a viral video that encapsulates the issue and connects it to the wider struggle against climate change and for a flourishing future based on renewable energy. And the best way I've seen things break through into the media is when you have a crisis. So, and that's just unfortunately the way it is. We had an enormous energy crisis on our coast again recently, and our Becca Clausen made a number of really important connections with media around the oil spill that fed into what is the solution. So it's really easy, and the media loves being against things, right? Or being upset about something, and there's a crisis, let's all freak out about it. They're not as good at covering what the next step is. They're not as good at staying with a story and seeing what the solution is. So another answer to your question is that we need to reinvent the media, and that leads me to something I almost forgot, which is the Optimist Daily. So I've heard a number of people come up to me, and there's one of them. So raise your hand if you are getting the Optimist Daily in your inbox. Nice, that is good numbers. So the Optimist Daily is a daily email that you can get, and I'll give you a card. Actually, Kristen, if you're still here, if you can get those cards to hand out to people on the way out. you sign up and you get a daily email in the mornings on weekdays that with 5 positive news stories, with headlines, with solutions inside of them. And Sweden, Denmark, and Iceland with 100% renewable energy goals. Amazing. Also, my friend Orion here, first thing he said to me was, did you see what California did? They signed the bill for a 50% renewable energy goal. So the whole thing, I know, right? It's amazing. Fine, let's clap for that. Could I have that for a second? Linda, could I borrow that for a second? The whole thing isn't about energy. It's just about solutions in general, but it focuses on energy because energy is at the core of the human existence and it's part of our purpose. Yes? So a letter to the editor campaign along with, so here's I'm gonna make a promise to everyone because I want to continue this momentum, but I also want to let people go. Becca and I are going to follow up with everyone who's signed this petition for the new people. If you haven't, please sign this so we have your email address. And then I'm going to follow up with an email that has suggestions for both letters to the editor and more information about the upcoming events where we're going to be able to speak to Pedro. And we're going to include a copy of this letter that we sent out in a digital format so you can forward it to your friends. Does that sound good to everyone? So make sure you're on our email list. I have an announcement that I want to make before we leave here, which is that Monday, October 12th, 6:30 to 8:30 at the Libero Theater. Paul Rellis and Pico Iyer are in conversation on the Community Environmental Council's 45th anniversary. So the Community Environmental Council has been a partner and an ally of ours, and it shares a lot of our goals here. And I just want to acknowledge the great work that they're doing and make sure everyone knows the history that is in this town of Revolution. And Jerry wants to add one more announcement.
And then a group we've worked with very closely, the United Nations Association, they're having their 70th birthday walk for the United Nations group here and 7 sister cities. That's going to happen Saturday, October 24th from 10 a.m. to 12 noon, and there's flyers on that on the table in the back if you are interested in joining them.
This is not. This is the same petition that, yeah. The same one that everyone signed. The people who've been here a while have signed it already. Yeah, exactly. Lastly, if Ronaldo scared you sufficiently, which I hope he did, and you want to get a consult for free about your home energy use, solar, batteries, generators, and dedicated circuits, please speak with Cynthia and fill out one of the forms she has in her hand. Cynthia is the leader on that program for us. It's called Powering Paradise. You get 10% discount and 10% of your revenues go to the Academy. Thank you all so much for coming. I appreciate it deeply. Love you lots.